Anybody gonna be able to fire up the computer?
Okay.
Okay. Well, I think you heard that earlier. Be here. That's our next meeting.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. We will now call the meeting to order. At this point, we will have an invocation by Sister Michaela Randolph.
O God of wisdom, understanding, and counsel, we gather here together to praise and bless your name. But in truth, it is you who have called us to bless us and fill us with your wisdom. We gather here to ask for the gift of your Spirit, and we find that we have already been enlivened with that same Holy One. We come here to seek truth and hope for the people of Atchison and for all we are responsible for. But in truth, you have gone before us, opening ways for us to be the truth and hope for others. We gather to thank you for the gift of one another, that together we can be a people of hope. We realize that all of life is gift, and when you are the giver, there is no end to the gift. We just ask this day to be open to this gift and to surrender ourselves to your call. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Sister. Okay, at this time, as we have no proclamations, we will call the roll. Tina, if you would please call the roll.
Mayor Young,
Present.
Vice Mayor Wilcox,
Present.
Commissioner Greenlee,
Present.
Commissioner Murphy,
Present.
Commissioner Slattery.
Barely.
All right, at this time, we will have a presentation, Beauty in Atchison by Sarah Rodriguez, architecture major, business administration minor from Benedictine College. And again, she is the class of 2024 for Benedictine College. Sarah?
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me, especially Mayor Young. I'm very excited to be here. Again, my name is Sarah Rodriguez, and I'm a senior here at Benedictine, graduating this Saturday, actually. I'm very excited. And I will be going back to Atlanta, Georgia, my home, and I'm working at a firm in downtown Atlanta that does a little bit of residential as well as town planning, both of which I love and I'm very excited to dive into post-graduating. Atchison has been my home these past 4 years, and everyone here has been very welcoming and opening their arms to it, and to that I'm very grateful. It's been a home to me and to every student here at Benedictine, and I've seen a significant impact on the town, even specifically with the tearing down of the mall on Commercial Street. That's even given me the ability to walk around in all the shops, go to all the coffee shops and different restaurants. It's something that my friends and we all spend a Saturday doing. So seeing these little things I've seen the significant impact just as a student. So moving into a little bit of my presentation, what is beauty? Beauty in architecture goes beyond aesthetics. It's the encompassment between the harmony between form and function. It has an ability to evoke emotion, and it's the reflection of cultural values. You know, this is something that you can see specifically here in our town, especially with all the homes, the older homes and all of the older buildings. You see this rich architecture and history and a story that's being told. Humans ultimately have this innate desire of beauty and tradition. This is why we flock to Europe, to all these new urbanist developments, and we yearn for this. But something that we don't realize is that this is attainable in our own homes, in our own cities, in our own country. So every person deserves to be surrounded by beauty. So how can beautiful things be attainable? It's a mindset and a choice. It's choosing to design with intention and purpose. You're not designing for yourselves right now. You're designing for your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. You're designing for generations to come. And you're designing to prove a legacy. Movements that are made today will be celebrating generations to come for many, many years. It's important to have beauty in the back of our minds. We are not trying to create beauty by starting from scratch. Rather, just like Atchison, there's really good bones, really good structure, and we can work with what we have. For example, moving into these images, this first one right here is in Poland, and it's the first image above in 2011. It's very stagnant, very soulless. In 2023, they came and gave it a little bit of facelift, a new life, a new purpose. And it took subtle movements and subtle additions that really just gave it a purpose, somewhere that people want to be and somewhere that people want to see. Moving into the next slide is this image. It reminds me a little bit of Atchison. So in the before, you see this beautiful building in the back, kind of hidden in the upper left corner behind some overgrowth. Then after, they kind of tore that down and just gave it new life. You see a car. Now in the second image, you can see life and people walking around, and you can see the beautiful architecture that's hidden behind. Now moving into this third image, which do you prefer? Anything I think would look better than what they say is now. It looks a little bit like a jail cell, personally. So they went from this life, this purpose, this building that kind of told a story and has something more to it rather than it's just a box with windows. And I think individuals deserve more than just a box with a roof and windows. So driving back to what we have all learned in school, from elementary school, middle school, high school, and college, why do we study ancient Greece and Rome? So a famous writer and aeronautical engineer, Robert Heinlein, once said, "A generation which ignores history has no past and no future." We cannot forget our history as a city, and we cannot forget our roots. So it's going forward with that. So looking at the study of ancient Greece and Rome is essential for understanding the foundations of Western civilization. It's crucial to understand their insight and what they've studied, to look at their human culture, politics, philosophy, and art. They prove success, and we look at their example in our own country for our own endeavors, their political systems and governance. Ancient Greece pioneered the concept of democracy. We use that here. Military power, we study it for our own military conquest and dominance. We study their military strategies and tactics. It provides us an insight into the nature of warfare and the impact on historical events. So they're doing something right. So why do we need to continue kind of looking back at what they're teaching and what they've done? And specifically in art and architecture. Their art and architecture is celebrated for their beauty, innovation, and lasting influence. From the Pantheon in Athens and the Colosseum in Rome, these buildings continue to inspire generations in awe and admiration. They serve as a testament to the creativity and engineering success of these great cities. Now, moving into the next slide, I'm not saying you need to build the Colosseum or the Pantheon in Atchison to be great, but rather it's choosing to design and develop with the hope that generations want to visit Atchison for its beauty and booming community. By this redirection of the ideology on how to design, a new wave of families will be attracted to live in Atchison. With an increase of families residing in Atchison, there's going to be more economic booms in the economy, from businesses needing to be expanding, housing, education systems, and so on and so forth. So it's one subtle movement that creates this big ripple effect. But know that this is not something that's overnight. One little movement that you make today is something that's going to be impacting generations to come. Now, it's going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take dedication. It's going to take money and time, but it will be something well worth it for the future of Atchison. It's important to make Atchison a home for many more generations to come. So I'm sure all the finance people in the room are immediately turning their heads at what all of this can cost. And honestly, a misconception is that beauty comes at a great cost, and that's wrong. Something beautiful does not need to cost a fortune. It is by no means going to be cheap, but it's an investment into the future. You are investing into the future of our town, into Atchison, and into the rest of the generations that will be here. In these 4 images right here, these are images of homes that are beautiful and simple, that tell a story, are welcoming and inviting. There's different size homes here for newlyweds, growing families, retirees, and it provides the ability to be able to stay in your own home and kind of just grow old in your own space. So now we've kind of talked about commercial and residential buildings, but what about public spaces? So this image here is the downtown space in Seaside, Florida, with on the outside of the green space, it's all mixed use of commercial building, use space on the lower level and residential on the top. And it's a very booming area, just providing this green space and this community space for individuals to grow and come together and collaborate. Kids can play soccer, parents can throw the football, kind of just promoting this beauty, not only in the buildings themselves, but in the green spaces. Moving on to this next image is a lawn at Vickery Village. And it's a small little new urbanist development in northern Atlanta. There's, again, that surrounding commercial, mixed-use spaces with a small little pavilion and green space. I live in this area, and we have a lot of children coming out here who are riding their bike around the little area, families that are coming and picnicking. So it's a great space to just continue to grow the community outside of home and school and whatever that may be. So what's next? It's embrace the vision of beauty in Atchison to retain and attract families for generations. What do you want Atchison to be remembered for? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate this. I actually was fortunate enough to be able to listen to Sarah at a morning meeting and was so impressed that I wanted her to share with all of us. So thank you, President Menes, for coming and sharing Sarah with us. Thank you, Sarah, for a wonderful presentation. At this point, if we don't have any questions for Sarah.
I might make a comment.
Sure, absolutely.
I spent 48 years on the campus of Benedictine College, and probably the most important change was Steve Menes's vision for what the campus should look like, first of all. And it went from a very dull, plain campus to one that had a wow factor. And I think that was a critical part of why the enrollment grew, and then the reputation subsequent to that, and then the improvements to facilities and all that. But just plants and trees and flowers made a tremendous difference as a starting point to move the college forward. I think we all understand the importance of the college to the community. And probably at a time when there weren't a lot of dollars to dedicate to that, but it was a matter of prioritizing funding and buying into this fact that beauty is important to people. They might not even realize it, but want to be a part of something that looks and feels that way, first class. Thought I'd throw that.
And I certainly appreciate that, Commissioner Wilcox, because I think what struck me the most about your presentation, Sarah, when I heard it the first time, and again when you shared with us, is the importance of what beauty does, not only for the value of the structure, but also for the identity of the community. And that's what certainly Commissioner Wilcox was talking about, and that's something that as we move forward as a city, that I would love for us to embrace, because beauty is part of our identity. Atchison is a very historical city, very important to our nation's history, and something that should definitely be celebrated and shared. But we first have to have that unifying vision. So I really appreciate you coming today, so thank you so much. Does anyone else have any other comments? All right, if not, we will move on to our public forum. And at this time, persons who wish to address the City Commission regarding items that are not on the agenda, again, they are not on the agenda, may do so at this time when called upon by the mayor. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes and should give their name and address when addressing the commission. Any presentation is for informational purposes only. So at this time, I'm going to open the public forum. Do we have anyone? All right, if not, we will close the public forum, and we will move on to the consent agenda presented by Amy Finch, City Manager.
Good afternoon.
afternoon.
Our consent agenda this afternoon includes approval of the minutes of the April 15th, 2024 City Commission meeting, approval of the 2024-2025 City Attorney and City Prosecutor contract with Robert D. Campbell, approval of the 2024-2025 Municipal Court Judge contract with Patrick Henderson, authorization for the mayor to sign the contract amendment request number 1 for the CDBG Commercial Rehabilitation Grant 23CR001 for 733 Commercial, authorization for the mayor to sign the CDBG Commercial Rehabilitation Grant 23CR001 for 733 Commercial time extension request, authorization for the mayor to execute documents for the 2024 Emergency Solutions Grant ESG application, and authorization for the mayor to execute the supplemental agreement for grant agreement TE 053701, otherwise known as Santa Fe West Safe Routes to School Stage 2.
Okay. At this point, do we have any questions for the consent agenda for Amy? All right, if there are no questions, are we ready to have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make such a motion.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second it.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that we agree to the consent agenda as printed. All those in favors, please state by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Next, we will have new business, and first will be fixed base operator FBO contract term extension, and this will be presented by our Public Works Director, Clinton. Yes, Clinton.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, so the fixed base operator, most commonly referred to as FBO, is Heartland Ag Aviation. And as for folks that don't know what an FBO is, basically, or in typical situations, it's a private entity located on an airport that the airport contracts with to provide certain services such as fuel sales, airplane rentals, hangar tenant management, things like that. Flight instruction would be another common one. For our airport, the FBO acts in those capacities in addition to being the airport manager in lieu of staffing it with city employees. The city entered into a 5-year contract with Heartland Ag in 2021, and that is currently set to expire in 2026. The FBO has requested that since 1 year of that contract will be basically suspended due to the airport closure for the runway construction, to extend that current contract to 2027 with all other terms and conditions remaining the same. That's all I have unless you have questions.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Clinton regarding the FBO? Okay. All right. If not, I am ready to entertain a motion. Would someone be interested in moving regarding the fixed base operator contract term extension? Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we authorize the mayor to execute the FBO contract addendum, extending the contract term to expire on May 12th, 2027. All those in favor, please say so by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you so much, Clinton, and I understand you have number 2 as well, the resolution number 3387, the Kansas Department of Transportation Alternatives Grant Application for the Unity Street Corridor Improvements Project.
Yes, so I think makes sense to handle the next two at the same time.
Sure, absolutely.
So yeah, there's 2 resolutions here for consideration, both related to grant applications for KDOT's Transportation Alternatives programs. One application is for Unity Street improvements from 2nd to 6th Streets, including curb sidewalk accessibility improvements in addition to pedestrian lighting like you see on 2nd Street or down on Commercial Street. More likely, more similar to 2nd Street, I should say. And a pedestrian-activated crosswalk signal at the crosswalk at St. Benedict's School, on that'd be the 200 block of Unity. The other application is for curb and sidewalk and accessibility improvements along 5th Street from Santa Fe to Unity Street, in addition to a pedestrian-activated crosswalk signal at 5th and Atchison. That project would be a third Safe Routes to School project. We've done one on South Fifth. One is kind of hopefully toward the end of design phase. It's already been approved and hasn't been out for bid yet, but that's what we call Santa Fe West. That'll focus on Santa Fe corridor. And this will be the third installment on our Safe Routes to School plan that's centered around Atchison Middle School. The grants are split 80-20, 80% KDOT, 20% local. There is a notable change for this round as they are including preliminary engineering costs as eligible. For us, these projects, probably the most impactful that would be is survey costs. For example, Santa Fe West was over $90,000 to survey that, and that was all local cost. Unity Street has already been surveyed. We did that a few years ago in hopes to be more prepared for a grant application. We've applied for Unity Street in various iterations through KDOT cost share and Transportation Alternatives without success. Transportation Alternatives, they want to see the addition of bike facilities, which is, I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's very difficult due to the width of the street and the impacts that would have and the overall cost. This is a scaled down version from 2nd to 6th, whereas in the past we've went from 2nd to 10th, 2nd to 13th. And so we're hoping it'll be more successful this time with news that there might be some development along that little short stretch that might increase pedestrian activity and make this a stronger application. So that's kind of where we're going with that. It also connects to 5th Street, which we're trying to get for the Safe Routes project. That connects to downtown, connects over 2nd Street, and we got kind of a connecting link going on there that might be attractive to those selecting the projects. Total city engineer estimate for both projects is about $1.6 million. It's probably end up being 1.7 if we get 5th Street awarded and we need to get a survey done. So local cost is going to be in that $325,000 to $375,000 range. CIP is not looking the best. If you were to look at it right now in 25, 26, 27, those years. However, there are things that will be moved around. Radial collector wells, that won't happen in the year that it's currently shown in CIP because design phase has taken longer. There's also no guarantee of construction funding for that project just yet, so it's just in there contingent upon grant funding. Another kind of a larger ticket item is the Bartlett Grain structures currently in CIP, contingent upon grant and or private funds being available. I don't think that the city would unilaterally try to do that project, and that could be moved around, taken away, deferred out to years until some of the funding opportunities present themselves. I say all that to say that I think enough things can be moved around that this would not be problematic. I think we would reprioritize our spending to fit these opportunities if awarded and defer some other things that are maybe they don't have grant funding associated with them.
Did I hear you say on Unity Street there was going to be electronic pedestrian control?
So can you picture right in front of St. Benedict School in the 200 block, there's a crosswalk, and we kind of put up some, I'll call it semi-permanent, like curb bumps and some reflective things. It was a kind of a conceptual thing to see if we could make that crosswalk a little safer. We did the same thing at Atchison Childcare a few years ago, and then we ultimately ended up building it out with concrete. So that would be a similar concept, except for that one, we would have just a user-activated flashing
It would be
crosswalk
like a
signal.
walk, don't walk sign, is that what you're telling me?
It would probably be,
I noticed where they have that at MGP.
it'd be similar, very similar to that concept.
These flashing lights.
Just
And that's kind of-
try to get motorists' attention more so than just the signs themselves would. It wouldn't be flashing all the time. It would be push button, because people get desensitized to those things, I think. But push button activated, it would flash for whatever the preset time is, whether it be 45 seconds or something like that. And then people would stop, just like you would at a crosswalk if it's being occupied. And if it's not occupied, you would drive through.
What's the deal with the, go ahead.
What does something like that cost?
The crosswalk lighting, I believe the engineer's estimate in both projects, because there's one in each project, is 60,000 is what his estimate is. 60?
Wasn't there a question about doing that in front of Atchison Child Care as well? I thought I saw.
There's been a lot of different things looked at. The latest is a scaled down version. So the one that we would look at would be more like the MGP one, where I believe it's hardwired to each other, and it's a more industrial grade system. I don't know if industrial is the right word, but whereas the ones we were kind of considering for possibly using on Kansas Avenue, solar powered, wireless communication, you tack them up on the existing signposts, very kind of I don't want to say it's low tech, but the installation is fairly straightforward and easy, and those are less than $10,000. So maybe not as permanent or robust as the other ones that we're looking at, but yeah.
What's this $60,000 one? Got any of them around here?
The one on Main Street was
MGP.
probably pushing that.
GPs?
I think it was technically less, but that's been a couple years ago now, and this will be a couple years into the future, so he's adding some inflation there.
What? Yeah. What's the deal with the bike lane? They won't let us combine that with a sidewalk somehow?
To do a sidewalk it would have to be a 10-foot wide sidewalk, or that's what they want to see. It'd be like South Atchison Trail or Riverfront or Main Street. Those are like multi-user, multi-purpose sidewalks that, someone's figured out that that's a safe width for combined use of pedestrian and foot traffic and bicycle traffic. So our 5-foot sidewalks on Unity wouldn't qualify for that. We'd either have to put a 10-foot sidewalk on one side, or put bike lanes out in the street. That's going to get into parking, which there's not a lot of parking west of 6th Street, but there's getting to be more and more parking, it seems, in between 2nd and 6th. We have more right-of-way than it appears, but then we're getting into, mature trees, people's steps up to their sidewalk that goes to their porch, mailbox, all those things, relocating those things, which is not the most fun thing to do. In one case, we've got a fire escape in the right of way. So there's some challenges there. Retaining walls would be another one. It's probably the most expensive one to deal with. So that's kind of where our hands are tied a little bit. I think going beyond fixing the sidewalks to accommodate bicycles out of the street, off the street, It's probably getting us out of price range. And going in the streets, eliminating parking for sure. I struggle with it because I know there is a bicycle community within Atchison, but I don't hear from them. And so it's hard for me to really try to figure out how to get bicycle facilities on this street, eliminating on-street parking, because you will hear from those folks, for 4 blocks or whatever this is. But just because KDOT, wants to see that incorporated into a TA grant application. I'm not saying I don't believe that we should have bicycling facilities. It's just, it's hard for me to tailor projects around that when the local community is fairly silent as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
My question is, if we apply for both these grants and we get them, is the design of them or how they lay out going to be guided entirely by the state? Or will we be able to negotiate with the adjacent landowners if we need to move something somewhere? I'm just wondering how much power we'll have over the use of the money in terms of designing it.
As it's conceived now, it's basically replacing sidewalk in pretty much the same alignment that it is now, and then installing light poles, similar to Second Street. I don't see a lot of usually when we do these projects, there's a little bit of back and forth with KDOT, and it's like relatively minor things. Sometimes if they think, they're real particular about right-of-way, so if they think we've got 1 square inch of sidewalk that's on the wrong side of the right-of-way, they'll want us to acquire right-of-way and that sort of thing. Like Unity Street, we've already surveyed that one. In this stretch from 2nd to 6th, there are no concerns about right-of-way requirements there. There were some at 9th and 10th.
Would this be
triangles.
both sides of the street?
Yes. Yep. And kind of, we'll pick, and like we do in all these projects, we kind of pick and choose. We're not out to replace sidewalks that are in good condition or curb that's in good condition. So it'll be patches of replacements.
Having lived here the best part of my life, there's always been, my logic is this: if we're going to spend this kind of money, and still the bulk of the traffic is automobile, and if you've ever driven down Unity Street and people are parked on both sides of the road, you're kind of like this. And I think we'd be service-minded ahead if we were to widen the street on one side by 4 or 5 feet, and then put a 10-foot sidewalk on the other side of the street and just have one. Just make it, you follow me?
Yeah.
The street is just like Second Street. It's very narrow and it's somewhat dangerous. And if you could, to me, if you could widen the street and have one sidewalk, make the other one a non-sidewalk side, I guess. Does that make sense? I mean, if they're going to give us money, hallelujah. How we use the money, that's why I was really asking how much input we would have in that. And I know that when you widen streets, you've got storm inlets, and I know all those things fall into that. But if we're going to spend the money, and driving on Unity Street is still dangerous, I think it is. And I just want to know how much leeway we'll have if in that respect. And that's just an idea.
Commissioner, I think that would alter the application that's prepared and would, if I'm understanding Clinton correctly, that would probably drastically increase the overall cost of the project, which would possibly put it out of our feasibility range for the local match.
Yes.
Okay.
However, the alternative to that would be to not submit this application, submit an application for that in the future. However, this isn't like applying for a U.S. Department of Transportation grant where they do multi-million-dollar projects. And this is a fairly modest program through KDOT. And we would have to, I'm already kind of chunking this project up to make it more palatable, to increase the scope to that degree and stay within to where the city's not footing 50, 60, 70, 80% of the bill. It would probably be a much smaller, probably we're looking at a couple blocks at a time or something like that.
I mean, I don't know,
We wouldn't be able to put this grant application in now and then during design phase tell them, on second thought,
okay.
Well,
that's what I was wondering.
Okay.
The grant's going to be awarded based on how the preliminary design is, not something that we can say, wow, this would be smarter, or this would be safer, or anything like that. We just can't do that.
I'd say there's a degree you could do that on, but widening the street or something like that would be such a change from the original concept that I don't know how they would
But
I don't
react to that.
KDOT, this program, sort of the emphasis of the whole concept. Alternatives very much believe, as do I, that wider streets are not safer. Cars go faster. Cars are not safe cars.
I think the only way that it would be attractive to them is if we widened it 6 feet in order to get, if that was the magic number to get 2 dedicated bike lanes, they might, go for that. But that's not, I don't think that is the magic number.
There's, reasonable people can.
I mean, if you drive up Second Street, and if there's anything going on at the college, and thank heavens there is, you don't drive a straight line going down Second Street.
I think that's exactly why cars tend to go slow. What's the most unsafe intersection? Largest, widest street with the car. Me, that's
Well, and the number of cars.
yeah, sure.
I mean, there's lots of variables there. But I'm just saying, if we're going to spend this kind of money, I think you can make it, if you made it wider and had parking on one side and had a 10-foot sidewalk on the other side for bikes and pedestrian traffic, you'd have a better project.
You'd be spending.
Well, sometimes you got to spend, I understand that. You can spend good money after bad, or bad money after good.
But, yeah, if I may, Commissioner, I think that at this junction, I understand where you're coming from with widening the street and safety. I think, the project that we have before us now with Clinton, I think it sounds like to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that our grant is crafted at this point puts us in a good position to be a grant awardee. If we also start talking about increasing costs, I know that I have received concerns about other areas, that if we are looking at increasing spending costs, there might be other areas that would need to be equally safe. And so I think at this point, the project, the way that it is written right now is fairly good.
I'm not saying we shouldn't do the project. I'm just wondering, and I'm not suggesting we don't apply. That's why my question was, how much of the design element are we going to be involved in, and how much leeway are we going to have? I don't know. I've been driving a few years, as we all have, and Second Street's dangerous. I'm sorry, it just is. You have traffic, you have parking on both sides. You have, the only one that might be worse might be Third Street, because you can't get 4 cars wide from parking on both sides. And I don't know if what the criteria is, but I would think the objective would be safety. I mean, that seems to be the song we sing, and I would think that would be something. I'm not saying don't do this. I'm just saying I hate to see us spend money and then go, man, this would have been a lot better if this street was 2 feet wider.
Well, once we apply, we're stuck with that.
That's what I'm saying.
The estimates prepared for you and the dollar figures he gave you are based on what you described, so that would have to be recalculated, and I think Clinton is saying that that scope of a project would likely not qualify for funding through this particular grant program.
I'd also add that in order to be eligible to even apply, we had to submit concept designs, concept proposals a month or two ago, and which is a very much less detailed version of an application. And so we've already submitted those. They said those projects were eligible. I would like to key on the term transportation alternatives. It's pretty much alternative to driving, so they're not looking to help out that
Right.
part of it. I suppose there's some elements that tie into it for pedestrian safety and things, but
widening a street is not something that they would be considering in terms of,
for the sake of widening a street so that vehicles could drive faster without having to pay attention as much or
Right.
swerve in it, or, just slow down for somebody to pass, make sure you're not clipping mirror, that kind of stuff. That's not what they're looking for.
I'll just interject. If we were going to build a new street in Atchison, we have criteria that it has to meet. And I would almost bet that Second Street and Unity Street don't meet the current criteria for a street.
Same,
We need a motion.
same.
yeah, we do.
Yeah, I move we adopt this thing.
Okay, so that would be for the first resolution, because we have 2 roll call votes, is that correct? So we need to do it in
need to
2
keep them
separate
separate?
votes. Yes, please, make it separate.
Then I'd move on 3387.
Okay, it's been moved that we adopt resolution number 3387. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution number 3387, the KDOT Transportation Alternative Grant application for the Unity Street Corridor Improvements Projects. All those in favor, please.
call.
Oh, it is a roll call. I apologize. Tina, could you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Wilcox,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenlee,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
Yes?
Commissioner Slattery,
Yes.
Mayor Young.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, next, is there a motion to adopt resolution number 3388, KDOT Transportation Alternative Grant Application for the North Fifth Street Safe Routes to Schools Stage 3 project, which will be a roll call vote?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second it.
All right. Tina, if you would please call the roll?
Commissioner Greenlee,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
Yes.
Commissioner Slattery,
Yes.
Mayor Young,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilcox.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will have board openings, which will be presented by me. You will see in our packet that we have one individual that is interested in becoming a member at large for the library board, and the gentleman's name is Ryan Pickman. At this juncture, are commissioners ready to receive a motion for Ryan Pickman being appointed to the library board?
So moved.
Okay, let's see, who would like to move and who would like to second?
Either one.
Okay, all right, let's have Commissioner Greenlee move, Commissioner Slattery second, to have Ryan Pickman on the library board. All those in favor, please state by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And we'd just like to thank Mr. Pickman for volunteering. I just encourage, again, all citizens to please take a look at our board openings, which can be found on the city's website. All right, at this moment, we will have termination of employee COVID-19 policy presented by City Manager Amy Finch.
For a little bit of brief background, in, I think it was January of '21, kind of at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic and trying to follow CDC guidelines, there was a policy written that said if you are believed exposed or tested positive, that you were to quarantine or at least stay at home 14 days, I believe. And we all know since that time, those CDC guidelines have changed drastically, as well as the number of COVID-19 positives and exposures and how those are treated. Our HR director has talked to me about this particular policy a few times, and so what it did is if an employee was required to be away from work for the 14-day period, the city used this policy to pay, so it was not charged to their sick leave. Just due to the changing standards of the pandemic, the CDC guidelines, and this has rarely been needed or used in quite a bit of time. Our HR director, and I would agree, it's probably time to look at terminating this particular policy. If there was a need at some point to re-implement this policy for either COVID-19 or some other unforeseen pandemic, we hope not, it would really need to be reworked anyway to make sure that our guideline was suggesting the correct recommendations as far as quarantining, staying home, doctor's notes, and those things. So this doesn't mean it can't or won't come back, but I don't think you'd see it in the same version. I'd be happy to answer any questions for you if you have any.
Amy,
Need a motion?
we do. Amy, I understand that it, like you said, it has not been used that much, and so it's time to move on in terms of, okay.
So our employees would still be allowed to take the time off if they were sick. Unfortunately for me, since Christmas, I've had several bouts where I chose to stay at home to not infect all of the rest of you with my germs. But so we still have sick leave available, and we also have a policy where if there's an employee that needs to be gone, either for themselves or to care for a family member, other employees that have more sick leave can donate some time to that person. That's common, that happens. We have very generous employees who have worked here a long time and maybe have a lot of sick leave built up in their bank. So it's rare that we would have an employee that has to be gone for a significant amount of time that does not have access to some sort of leave. And then, of course, everyone is protected under FMLA and all of those employee protections.
Do you have you know how much leave someone can build up?
Oh, gosh.
Is there a limit on how much?
There is, well, I will get that answer for you. I think there are actually 3 tiers built into our employee policy. And I believe it, like for myself, if I were to leave employment because of when I started within, I think it's 10 years maybe, or 5, the percentage of sick leave payout is very small, where that some of our longer-term employees, they fall under a different policy, and I would be happy to send that section to you.
Part 2 of my question
Okay.
was going to be reimbursed for sick days, resign, retire.
So, yes, depending on their length of service with the city. Yeah, their date of hire kind of dictates what, I think there's 3 tiers for that. And then we do have a max or a cap on vacation leave. And that is essentially to protect the city from carrying too much liability. If you let everyone accrue and don't put a cap on it and several people leave, that could be very costly. And we do in our audits and in our budgets kind of look at our accrued and what we expect to pay out. Retirements can be costly, so we do have a cap on how much you can accrue, and then I'll be happy to send those sections to you to look at.
Any other questions, concerns? Commissioner Slattery, I think you were ready to move.
Yeah, I just don't know exactly how to word this. Guess we just move to
Approve the termination.
commission for the termination of employee COVID policy. Yeah, that'll.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the termination of the employee COVID-19 policy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commission. Before you
Thank
go
you.
on, Mayor,
Yes.
HR will be sending a notice out ahead of time to our employees to let them know, and I believe she has that set for the end of May.
Okay.
Did you vote? Okay.
Okay, yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Period.
Okay, and then Amy, I believe we have communications?
Yes.
All right.
Before I read through these, I'm going to tell you, we're working internally on, just today, kind of started talking about what some of our budget timelines are going to look like. And we kind of have 3 different ones. So Reagan and I are going to be focusing on timelines for certifying to the county clerk, publishing in the newspaper, calling our public hearings. We're then going to have some timelines so staff knows when certain budgets are going to be needed for presentation to the city commission. And then we're going to work on a schedule that we can present to you to talk about some budget workshops and what we plan to cover in those to make sure. And there's some critical dates that we'll communicate to you. If all of you can be here, that would be best, and we'll get those out to you as quickly as possible. I know you've got some important discussions this week on Thursday. And so once some decisions have been made from there, we'll start including additional staff and then get that information out to you quickly.
Okay.
In our agenda today, we've got 3 sets of Atchison Housing Authority meeting minutes from March the 1st, March the 19th, and March the 31st of 2024. And we received a notice that the Mount Vernon Cemetery will be considered by the Kansas Historic Sites Board for nomination to and listing in the Register of Historic Kansas Places.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, seeing there are no other informational items, do we have governing body comments? Commissioner Greenlee?
I have
All right. Vice Mayor Larry Wilcox?
two things. Would anybody other than me be interested in a study of whether or not Second Street should be one-way going north and Fifth Street going one-way going south? With the increased activity at the college, with the new housing that will be east of Second Street, it's already a complicated issue. I know a lot of towns have one-way streets. Go to St. Joe and spend 5 minutes, you know. But if we could decrease the traffic, the two-way traffic on 2 of the larger arteries going north and south, I think there's some benefit to that. So I don't know if there's a cost involved in studying that or not,
Yeah.
but I've thrown that out there.
That would be my question, because would that be something that city staff could accomplish, or is that something that we would need to hire a consulting team to do?
Since I live on Fifth, I don't like that idea at all.
So I don't know that you're going to have any more traffic. It's just going to be going one way.
Larry, would you?
Larry, did you mean Fourth Street or Fifth Street going south?
I believe Commissioner is talking about, did you say Second Street?
Second Street
Second
going
Street.
north.
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 Fifth Street going south.
Fifth Street?
Is that the larger,
Yeah, that's up on,
huh? Well, I'm sure anybody that lives on those streets, some of them might want that, others might not.
Fifth Street's a pretty wide street. You don't mean Fourth Street, do you?
Well, either one, but Second Street is by far the biggest problem in my mind.
Would you take into consideration as well, not in place of, but consider as well, making Second Street parking on one side?
If you're going one way, I don't know that you just need parking.
Well, no, I still have it 2 ways, but just eliminate parking.
Yeah, well, then I think.
That was the whole point of my tirade there was.
Then I think that the residents would be upset,
We'd have
because
to-
whatever side that you said they couldn't park on.
Right, it would be.
There's a
Or you
lot
could
of parking issues there. Parking all the way up.
Well, not to be extraneous, but is this something that we could have staff take a look at in terms
Some
of?
discussion, you know.
Yeah, And is this something that we can do now, or is this something, considering our budget audit going on, is this something that we can look at either now or look at after our budget process? Because I think it is a good idea to have a study.
And I would say that probably the cost of it would determine if we had enough in the budget now versus if we would want to plan ahead for that.
Okay.
We would need to know what we are asking a consultant for.
Oh, Vision 4.
No. Well, by going one way, there's no additional inconvenience to the residents other than one side's going to have to walk across the street when they
Second Street is this terrible.
You say that is the case, that it's a
It's the case, it's not the worst. I think what everybody keeps alluding to is, you know, have an engineering standard. The theory is that 85% of drivers will drive what the environment allows them to drive. That's what we talk about when roadways are less and obstacles. Yeah, opening up. Also, accidents you may think are happening. What's happening now?
Yeah.
What would happen with what you're alluding to? And more unsafe driving because 85% of drivers will drive what the environment allows them to drive. We all know that. We all have better speed limits. Because we've had the same study one time on First Street. Residents really opposed it. They also
Mhm.
Main Street, stop to let the oncoming traffic through. I understand what you're saying, what the theory is.
I accept your 85% rationale. I accept that, but they're just, the traffic flow on Second Street is pretty high, my estimation. It's going to get more dense as we move forward with any additional house that goes up there.
Your points are valid. Hey, police department, I'm kind of familiar with this. Police department, traffic studies, because they funded it. And they in turn, a company out of Olathe, they came down every time. Certain things that they're looking for. One-way problem, one-way study. They're looking for number of vehicles going in a certain direction, and by accident, particularly if it's an intersection. Because sometimes we'll determine stop sign. You have an unmarked intersection. Stop sign. There's an engineering calculation based on direction of people, heaviest traffic direction. In this case, if you think about it, named two. So if you talk about the direction of travel, it's probably going to talking about traffic accidents.
I guess I'm curious why some cities choose to have one-way streets. Some cities have lots of one.
Question.
So,
Just to aggravate people.
so anyway, I just throwing that out there. Put it-
I mean, I have an answer for that.
Yes,
I'm not a
please.
traffic engineer, but my answer is that cities started adopting one-way streets when people stopped living close to where they worked. It was a method to get people to the suburbs and back faster in cars. Because one-way streets, there are fewer conflict points. And so you feel comfortable driving faster. Now, would every traffic engineer agree with that? No, but that's my belief. And it's a lot of cities, actually, the more modern trend is to take away one-way streets, take them back to two-way, because it's more likely to foster that's more in like downtown settings, where, I mean, you can do some of your research on that, Google around, tell me if I'm wrong, but there's cities like Omaha, St. Louis, where there used to be a lot of one-way streets, and they're kind of trying to get away from them because it allows you to park, typically like in a one-way setting, if you got a 4-lane wide street, you park on both sides, have 2 lanes, like, you can go faster. If nobody's coming at you, you feel safer driving faster. The other thing I might say about it is that since I was a child, I grew up on 2nd Street. There is certainly more traffic. And is it irritating to see 1 out of 100 go 45 miles an hour? Yeah, because I cross 2nd Street probably more than anybody, and I do it with 2 young kids who insist on walking themselves across it instead of being carried. So I'm very sensitive to this conversation. But I don't think one way achieves much unless the goal and the only measurement is to put more cars through it faster. It wouldn't make me feel safer crossing it, but it would move cars faster, and more of them.
I drive a lot, and I don't feel safe because some of the people, they're not going to give you, they're not giving you half.
Sure.
They want 2/3.
Yeah.
Some of those are going at a pretty good clip as well. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just throw that out there to,
Okay.
we're talking about streets.
Yeah.
The second thing I had is, and I hope this is an okay question for this time, but since we have 37 grades to give here, would we be more efficient if we split these for I mean, I've read them all once, but now if I got to go back and grade them, if we each took 7 or 8, would we do a better job?
I think there was a bunch of them that were just kind of, I got the impression that they were just people that just sent everywhere.
Well, and I think that at this juncture, we probably shouldn't have this discussion here in this format. And I think that during our special session, we can certainly address that.
I
Amy?
would just add that your end goal is reaching a consensus based on each of your individual opinions about who your top choices are. I don't know if that helps you get to that goal and what your timeline looks like, but keep that in mind. I think there's a number of resumes to get through. That's true, and that's a good and a challenging matter for you. But it may be easier if you each have selected your top candidates, and then you may have to have some discussion from there about which of those as a group. That's my only 2 cents, but.
And my 2 cents is, it reminds me of a way that I have used in the past when I've been on grant panels for both federal and state, and you have a number of applications. And what they ask is that you fill out a sheet, you rank, and then you can get through the discussion much quicker and in a more organized manner. And I understand your concern that you've
My
already
eyeballs
done.
are starting to hurt from 500 pages of resumes.
But, I mean, my theory was that you look at some of them, so they must have sent this out to.
And then I would say rank them as such, shouldn't
Right.
take you very long, and that way we can be organized and
It is a
get through it
lot to
quicker.
dig through, my God.
Yeah, it is. Well, with that, Commissioner Slattery, governing body comments?
I don't think so. let you guys.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Murphy?
Just that we should all be in, and I don't know how much I can say that I know,
Probably not much.
but we have had a tragedy in our community, and I think we should all pray.
Yes. I would concur with Commissioner Murphy that definitely keep our city in prayer and the families. Regarding, oh, okay, well, I'm sure that you will hear because I don't, well, Amy, would you like to, wait?
I did speak with, we had a structure fire in town on 3rd Street, and at the time I spoke to Chief Weiser, you'll notice he's not with us this afternoon because he was at that fire and there was a tragedy. And then I believe he was waiting for the fire marshals to finish their investigation, and then he will be issuing a press release, and as soon as I get that, I will forward that to each of you. But at the time I spoke to him, they had not reported to him any findings or anything yet.
Okay. Okay, that's okay. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. As for my governing body comments, I too share concern about traffic and our traffic patterns. One area of concern is on Kansas Avenue with Atchison Child Care. That is another example of a street where folks will speed, and there is a child care facility there, and we need to be mindful of that. And I would just also like to express my concern for that area as well. Additionally, I would just like to thank both Clinton and Amy and Clinton's team for all of the hard work that they put in for the grant applications, the grant appropriations that the city has received. That's something that is a lot of hard work. And Clinton, we really appreciate you, and we thank you for all the work that you put in. At this time, I don't have any other comments. I don't know if any commissioners have any additional comments. If not, we will adjourn to the Land Bank. And do I have a motion to adjourn to Land Bank?
Make such a motion.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second? All right, it's been moved and second that we adjourn to Land Bank. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign.